With the report and, of course, give a compliment to those comments made in that story is Peter Wandera, the Executive Director at Transparency International. You're welcome, sir. Good afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Good afternoon, viewers.
I have watched that story and seen, maybe heard you talk about some of the highlights of the report and some gentlemen in the interviews. But just before we start, is that a sign of maybe an education system that is probably not leading us to where we want to be, especially speaking of achieving a middle income status with a kind of education system that will give us the kind of results that we want and the kind of churning out the kind of people that we want?
Yeah, of course, we should first of all recognize the importance of education, and this is mostly in relation to the SDG 4, looking at having universal quality education for all. So once you don't have the education right, then eventually it will affect the final outcome of whatever you do. Because if you don't get the basic education right, it will affect the secondary education, it will also affect the university education. That means that eventually what you'll be producing won't be of quality. And of course you'll end up losing out on some of what you intend to achieve. Yeah, that's how we are looking at it.
That's how you're looking at it. So what did you intend to achieve when you set out to do a survey in these 204 schools? What were you looking for?
Yeah, first of all, us as Transparency International Uganda, we have been coming out with various reports on issues of corruption in various sectors. And this time we went out to trace corruption behaviors, most especially at basic education and with particular reference to UPE schools. And the purpose of the study was to document and find out if at all such behavior exists. And if it exists, what's the extent and what can we do about it? So that was the main purpose of the study.
That was the main purpose of the study. So take us then through the highlights and how bad is the problem, for instance, of corruption strangely in these schools. And you mentioned earlier that you focused on universal primary education schools.
What we found out, we did our research in 2 districts, that's Mukono and Wakiso, and we used it as a sample. And we're focusing on 204 schools out of the total number of 437. And in our study, we spoke to various people. We spoke to teachers, we spoke to parents, we spoke to district officials, we even spoke to the pupils. And what was coming out of the total people we spoke to, at least 60% said that actually corruption does exist at this level of education. And some of the findings of the nature of corruption that was coming out, there were instances of parents bribing teachers, parents bribing head teachers to get places for their children at school, to get better grades. Also found out that there were instances of administrators of the school bribing for opportunities. These opportunities are in forms of transfers, opportunities in form of studies, and the like. Then we also found that there was a problem with teacher absenteeism. Teacher absenteeism was quite a problem at that level, whereby teachers decide to come as and when. We found that some teachers come sign in and disappear, come back later to sign out. Of course, we also found some element of sexual, what we call sextortion. Yeah, this was between the teachers, between the administrators, and some of it was between...
Sex for marks?
Not really sex for favors.
What is that, sextortion? What is that term?
Sextortion is a term that's coined whereby corruption, bribery takes place, but the currency used is somebody's body.
Oh, sure.
That's the currency being paid.
Wow, which slang on the street is sex for marks nowadays. Anyway, so going forward, I see that those are those are really serious findings. So, but going on, where you must have made some recommendations. What should be done?
Yeah, of course, we looked at recommendations. We looked at the nature of the manifestation of corruption. First of all, some of it is behavioral. It's a person, that's how they are, that's how they are behaving. And this, we recommend that there should be stricter monitoring of the teachers. We should also strengthen the school management committees so that they are able to monitor. Then we also looked at enforcing the code of conduct, because teachers have a code of conduct. How much do we enforce it? Because now teachers have forgotten why they went into that profession. Then, of course, we're also directing some recommendation to the policymakers, because we found that sometimes funds that are sent to school are too little and they're going late. So that gives the head teacher schools excuse to go into corrupt practices.
The story is big, and definitely next time I'll ask you how bad is the problem of corruption in Uganda today. It would be very unfair for someone from Transparency International, an organization that monitors corruption tendencies and indexes about corruption. So next time, and that's it. Let's have a look at what